You're listening to Staying Wild, the podcast where we ditch burnout and build outrageous success and lives the wild way. I'm Adelaide, the high-performance coach James Bond would secretly hire if pink was his vibe. I've helped over 500 high achievers land promotions, smash personal bests, pivot careers, achieve their full potential, and actually love their lives. Yes, I have. All in under a year. No fluff, just deep mindset work, potent energy, and breakthroughs worth popping champagne over. Now it's time to join me and Wolfie on the wild side with today's episode. This was the very first guest interview I recorded, and I have been so looking forward to sharing it with you. It is a powerful, standalone conversation that touches on what it means to be a woman today, or a wild woman, the erosion of women's rights, and how one woman's refusal to use the phrase pregnant people changed the course of her life. It shouldn't be controversial, and yet it is. I believe we should all be able to stand fully in our higher selves without fear of being trolled, cancelled, attacked, or even sacked. We don't have to agree with everyone, but hatred, harassment, and abuse are never the answer. Respect, kindness, and compassion are. That might look like stepping away, responding thoughtfully, or simply choosing silence instead of cruelty. As my guest, Janet Murray, says, women deserve to feel safe, in public and private, at the same time as holding empathy and compassion for others. That balance isn't always easy or comfortable, but it's important we strive for it. To me, Janet embodies the essence of a wild woman. Know your values, stand firm in them, take up space unapologetically, and lead from strength, kindness, respect, empathy, and love, and from who you are, your most authentic, true self. Now, you may not agree with everything she says, and that's the point. In an age of echo chambers, where healthy discussions so easily turn toxic, it's more important than ever to hear different perspectives, to form our own opinions with integrity, and to express them in ways that align with kindness and respect. In the 1950s through the 70s, women in Afghan cities lived far more liberally. They studied at universities, worked in medicine, education, and politics. They voted, ran for parliament, and yes, even wore miniskirts in Kabul. Since 2021, the UN has called the Taliban's rule in Afghanistan the most serious women's rights crisis in the world. Women are banned from education, barred from most jobs, forced into full body coverings, and heavily restricted in their movement. Now, I wonder if, in the 70s, Afghan women imagined this could ever become their reality. This is why it is so important we keep having respectful, empathy-led conversations around women's rights, and why feminism is still needed. Silence can be compliance, speaking out against injustice, supporting causes you believe in, or simply living each day with compassion. Your ripple effect matters. Small acts of courage and kindness change the world more than you realize. So today, I invite you to listen with openness, to reflect deeply, and to celebrate what it means to stand strong in your truth. And please, join me in sending Janet Murray love, light, and healing as she navigates her recent breast cancer diagnosis. Now, let's dive into this conversation with strategic marketing consultant and advocate for free speech and women's rights, Janet Murray. I am so excited to have you on Staying Wild. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, I've had a bit of a interesting couple of months, which I'm sure we'll get into. But yeah, other than that, I'm good. The sun's shining and yeah, I'm okay.
I'm jealous the sun is shining. I can't see out my window. It is so cloudy. So I have been seeing you fully owning your wonderful wild woman energy when that post of yours kind of popped
off in quite a big way, as we were saying, quite surprising in a way. And it's been really powerful to witness how you've been responding to the situation. I would love to hear more about what this experience has been like for you and how you've been embodying that wild woman energy.
So is it helpful if I share the story from the start to not the very start, but kind of how this all kind of kicked off?
That would be wonderful.
So to give a bit of background, I've been running an online. I'm a former journalist. Before that, I was a teacher, and then I kind of fell into running this like online marketing type business for the last decade or so. And for reasons which we might not get time to get into, I've kind of changed my kind of focus over the last few years, and I've kind of got more into running strategic marketing campaigns for people. And kind of, I actually got quite fatigued. It is quite relevant, I think. I got quite fatigued with being online all the time and being visible. And when you're visible online all the time, people like to have a go at you. And I just kind of got to the point where I just thought I can't even get in front of a camera ever again. I did when I had to, but I guess I was burnt out by being online and being a visible face online. I built not a massive online platform, but a decent size, enough for people to troll you and give you a hard time at times. So over the last few years, I've taken a bit of a step back and I was working more on these kind of high impact marketing campaigns where I was working more with one-to-one clients and just having a kind of quieter life because I really, really needed it. But in the background, I was starting to notice what was happening with women's rights and free speech. And I was a journalist for many years. I used to watch every news program, be on Twitter all the time, and actually when I got into this new area, it was actually a bit of a relief not to kind of be like plugged into current affairs like all the time, every news program, every bit of breaking news. And somehow I'd kind of missed it. I'd sort of picked up that there were some things happening that were a little bit, I wasn't quite sure about. And things like, guys using women's toilets and changing room and competing in women's categories in sports. And there were a few things that came up, and I was like, I'm not sure how I feel about this, but I've always been quite left leaning and quite liberal minded. So it's like, what's the harm in any of this? Pronouns, I was like, that's a bit weird because I'm a generation X. Don't really think that's necessary, but hey, whatever. So I started to sort of tune more into what was going on. And in particular, I started to become aware of sort of high profile cases of women who'd been quite spectacularly cancelled for, from what I could see, just telling the truth. So like Maya Forstater, who got sacked from her job at a think tank, and there was a big court case, and she basically lost her whole livelihood for just kind of saying that she believed there were two biological sexes, male and female. She worked for this think tank, where there'd always been healthy debate and conversation. And J.K. Rowling wrote what I thought was a very balanced essay and respectful essay, and people were calling for her books to be burnt and calling her a witch, and I was just kind of watching one by one, not just women but also some men as well, people like Graham Linehan, who wrote Father Ted and the IT Crowd, and I was just sort of thinking, what the heck is going on here? Because as far as I can see, these people are speaking the truth. They're saying, somebody can choose to live as the opposite sex and that's fine, no, it's no problem, but actually they can't actually change their sex. And I was starting to notice things like NHS literature, so the changing of words, and it seemed to me like it was really all about eradicating the word woman, so the chest feeding instead of breastfeeding, and ovary havers and womb havers. And I was like, this is like weird. I don't really like this, but I'm not somebody that would generally kind of dive into something without getting educated. So I read all the books, read all the research papers, listened to all the podcasts, watched, just absolutely immersed myself. And actually what was happening to me, I think I was getting quite behind the scenes. I was just raging. I was just thinking, this is just so wrong. It's like the emperor's new clothes. We're almost being forced to go along with these things which are clearly not true. They're harmful to women. And I remember that there was a point where I was sharing something on my personal Facebook, which was my daughter had come home. She wanted to stay at somebody's house or something. And I said, oh, they were called a name that could have been a boy or a girl. And I said, oh, are they a boy or a girl? Because they were both underage at the time. And I was recounting this story, just almost like an amusing anecdote, because she said they're non-binary. And I said, well, yeah, but are they a boy or a girl? Because you want to go to the house. And she said, oh, you can't ask that. That's really offensive. So I remember sort of sharing this on Facebook. And that was when I realised, oh my God, there are people who really believe that it's more important to protect somebody's feelings over something which I'm not really sure is even a thing, than safeguard children. Like, because I was thinking, well, do I need to have a talk with my daughter, like, about safe sex or underage sex? I was just
Definitely.
kind of like, being a mum and trying to work out, like, and I was thinking, this is about safeguarding these are children,
Mhm.
like they're underage, and we need to understand and be able to ask these questions. But so anyway, it kicked off this massive thing on Facebook. And I think actually that was actually what sent me deeper to kind of really like find out about it. And I was just getting, it was like an existential crisis because we're seeing more and more of this stuff going on and just thinking, this is awful, but it's like in every organization, it's in every business. This is just not right. And there was all the stuff with the CAS review and children, having surgery, and just I was just disturbed by all of it. So towards the end of the last year, but I also realized that even just expressing a mild opinion about it, like it wasn't this, but the bit that worried me more than all of it was that it wasn't okay to have an opinion. So suddenly it's like,
Mhm.
as a woman, it's not okay for you to have an opinion about whether a male can share your changing room or toilet. Like, you just have to shut up. You can't have an opinion about it. We can't have a conversation. And I could see this had been going on for years and years. And I could see how many people had lost their livelihoods. So towards the end of last year, I wrote this very mild article for for Substack, this blogging platform. And it was
Mhm.
like, what does it mean to be a courageous woman in 2024 at the time? And I think you're a bit younger than me, so these references probably mean nothing to you. But I talked about some of the things that, because I was in 1984, I was 10. Is that right? Yeah, I was 10. So I talked about some cultural things that I thought were brave. So I talked about this woman on the telly called Annika Rice who used to like do helicopter running. I thought she was really cool and brave. I talked about Bob Geldof, doing his like Ethiopian, like raising money, feeding the world. I talked about people hiding Jewish families from the Nazis. Like, that was what I thought was brave. And even though I knew there was like inequality, I knew that there was some men got paid more than women and there was sexism, but I never felt like I couldn't say this is what I want or this is what I. But I was looking at this thinking things were better in 1984, like, because at least you could say there might be more sexism and more inequality, but at least you could say, and people would listen to you. So I wrote this very mild article about what it means to be a courageous woman in 2024. People was like, well done for speaking up. And I made the point, like, people are calling me courageous because I say I'm not sure I want to share a toilet or changing room with a biological male. People are saying I'm courageous for saying, there are two biological sexes. This is weird. But I realized on Substack, it's kind of a blogging platform. I was almost like preaching to the converted because the people there have been talking about this stuff for years. I thought, I'm not really having an impact here. So I pondered over Christmas. I also interviewed a young girl on my own podcast, which I did get a bit of flack for, who was sacked from her student radio, young 19-year-old girl, for holding the same views as me, starting off in her life, wanting to get into journalism, just sacked from her student radio station. And I could see this was all really growing in universities. However, I could feel this like inner, like I just wanted to get it out because I was just like, I'm not somebody that finds it very easy not to say things, have a strong sense of fairness and justice. And I could see other people being cancelled for saying this stuff, which just seemed like common sense, other people losing their jobs, their livelihoods. There was the Darlington nurses who had to take a petition to Parliament and take legal action to try and get a man out of their change. Like I was just like, this is just mad. But I wasn't expecting what happened. So basically, I made a video. Having not done any video for years and years, I don't know what I was thinking. I was like, do you know what I need to do? I need to do a 30-day challenge. I just need to get on video every day and force myself to make a video, even if it's crap, even if it's like imperfect. And I called it 30 Days of Imperfect Video. I was just finding my way and finding my voice again. I was listening to this podcast, and it was a podcast that I've really, really liked for years. I heard the opening line, and it was something like, in this podcast, we're going to explore the impact of maternal health inequality or something on pregnant people. And I was like, what? So maternal health, pregnant people. And I remember just like turning it off because I was like, because I've had numerous miscarriages, I've had premature birth, I've had like ectopic pregnancy, I've had all the gynae stuff, and I was just like, oh, just like, and I thought it was really interesting because I was listening to it as a marketer, and I was thinking, I am completely turned off. Attract and repel. I'm turning this off because I don't like this podcast anymore because I feel that's quite disrespectful to women. But at the same time, I was conscious that there were some people that would say, "Oh, isn't that really nice?" Because they're being really inclusive and they're including people who, are not biological women. And so I was just like curious about that. So I made this video in which I just said what I've just said to you, and I said I didn't like the phrase "pregnant people," and that was that. I was expecting, because I knew it was a slightly controversial topic, I expected a couple of people might make some quite heated comments on it. I expected a bit of backlash, a bit of abuse, but I didn't expect what's happened, which is basically my whole world and business has been turned upside down in the space of about 8 weeks. Because within a few hours, there was people on there who were just saying I was hateful, I was a Nazi, I was right wing, I was alt right, I was a TERF. That's a term used. It's used as an insult. Trans exclusionary feminist, and people were going off onto LinkedIn and other platforms making posts about me, implying I was a Nazi, comparing me to Hitler, and encouraging other people to pile on and to get involved in those conversations because I said I didn't like the phrase pregnant people. And it was just popping off absolutely everywhere. And I did have a lot of support. Some people were commenting publicly, but a lot more were messaging me privately. This is on Instagram to say, thank you so much for speaking up. You're so brave. You're so courageous. I fully support you, but I can't speak up because I fear that I will lose my job. I feel that I will lose my livelihood. My friends will fall out with me. My friend has got a trans child. People were telling me these horrendous stories. Like somebody was telling me that their business, I've had a few women actually whose businesses are actually related to maternity and pregnancy, and saying that they have been sort of cancelled for speaking up. Some people told me that they've been warned, like if they spoke up on social media, on their private social media about any of this, they would be sacked. Some people messaged me and said, you do know me, but you don't know me. I've created this Instagram account as a kind of private account because I've been told I'll get sacked if I get caught speaking up on my own private, and it just, so I guess some people might have gone, right, okay, I'm going to leave this conversation. But that for me felt like it was even more important to speak up because when you really think about it, you're a woman telling the truth about women's bodies, about women's sex-based rights, about their rights to single spaces, just about their right to have a voice. That's more important to me than any of the kind of the more nuanced parts of it. It's like telling women that they can't have an opinion on their own rights or spaces. So I just kept going. I just kept going and I kept going. And it was like somebody had like uncorked a bottle because it was just like, well, it's out now. I've said it now. I can't go back because once I've seen it happen to other people, once you say it, you can't unsay it unless you apologize and you say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it, but I do mean it, and I stand behind everything that I said." I said, and actually, although this hasn't made my life any easier, the Supreme Court ruling, it was March 2025, which endorses everything that I've just said and protects it in law. I mean, how we ended up having to go to court to prove what a woman is and to be kind of supported in saying that in the law is something. But that I kind of helped to an extent, but it's still, I'm in the situation now where I'm going to have to rebuild my business because I've had clients. I've had loads and loads of support, loads of new people who have found me, but I've had clients who have actively said, you disgust me. I'll never have anything to do with you ever again. I'm disgusted I ever bought any of your products or services. You make me sick. I've had people actively reach out and ask to have their data removed from my CRM. I have had, people that I'll never be able to speak at a marketing event again, or I'll never be able to move in any of those circles because I've had attacks from people in those circles who've actively come after me. I'm potentially going to end up, I can't say too much, but potentially could end up in a legal case as a result of a piece of content that was made about me that was really defamatory. It's just been like, if someone had told me when I was 10, 1984, that I would always have my livelihood destroyed because I know what a woman is and I know the difference between a male and female and I'm not afraid to say it. So anyway, I feel like I've just talked and talked and talked, but hopefully that gives a bit of context.
No, that was wonderful. I think one of the most surprising, and as you said, like I shouldn't have been surprised, but what I found the most surprising is I've been following you, I've been to your events for years now. I know you're a good person. I know you have a really kind heart. And the way you've been met with so much hostility and unpleasantness
Yeah.
has really surprised me because it's the same people who say that we should love everyone, but only the people we approve of.
Mm.
And I find that kind of like pot calling the kettle black because on the one hand, they're saying you should be super nice to everyone, but in that same sentence, they are being really nasty and unpleasant. And as
Mm.
you said, the way to get out of it would be to apologize. But then I feel, isn't that what women have been doing for centuries? Is when hostility is created in an environment, we feel unsafe, and then we placate and we try and keep the peace because that's
Yeah.
what we've been taught we should do as women.
Mm.
And then,
Yeah.
as you said, we're then losing our voice again.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the irony, yeah, of people who are saying, their position is that in defending women's rights and spaces, whatever, then you're excluding another group, which is trans and non-gender conforming. And, I respect that as an opinion and would be really happy to kind of have that conversation with somebody. But there's no conversation, it's no debate.
No.
It's just you're wrong. And not only are you wrong, I disagree with you, but that makes you a Nazi, you're a hateful person. And these obviously are people who are preaching tolerance, but are actually really intolerant of other people's views. We're not just seeing it in the women's rights space, we're seeing it in all sorts of aspects of society where these are the people that probably would have been going, oh, be kind when a Caroline Flack. I sometimes think to myself, do these kind of people ever think about the impact that they might be having on someone when they're publicly trying to shame and call people out and the impact on somebody's mental health? Does it ever cross their mind? Because it would cross my mind, and
Mm.
I'm always polite. I don't think people always appreciate I will explain everything in a way that, I don't know, people might feel patronized, but I'm always polite. I don't swear at people. I don't sling abuse at people, and they might not like what I have to say, but I'm not abusive. But there's just so much irony in it and so much hate as well. And there's so much intolerance. There was something that I wanted to pick up on that you said earlier, which I can't remember what it was now. It sort of shocked me and it hasn't shocked me because I've seen it happen to other people
Mm.
and I've been like open mouthed seeing how hateful people I could be. People I thought were good people. And it's also, oh, that's what I was going to say, is that I've always had this theory that the people who seem like the nicest are not like, and the people who might be a bit crustier or might be a bit kind of like less nice on the surface, particularly women, are often the people that kind of come up trumps and come out and support you. And I've definitely found that that is the case. And I'm not sort of like in my industry, I've upset people because I've already called out practice and behavior that I don't think is right. And obviously people don't like that. So I'd made a few enemies by speaking up about things that were unrelated to this and not just kind of looking the other way. So, of course, when this came up, I think there's some people who were just like desperate to kind of have a go at me as well, because that was the point I was going to make about as a woman. I think there's this real pressure to be nice all the time and to be likable. And when you're somebody that has an opinion and isn't afraid to express it and is articulate and informed about things, you get treated differently, I think, than men do. So a man who's got an opinion, you're still expected to be nice and accommodating. And I think this particular issue is more challenging for a lot of women. I do have quite a lot of empathy for that because it really does. I mean, it took me ages to kind of, a lot longer than it should have done for me to speak up because I had that tension about, well, actually, this group is a marginalized group. They're going through something, we should be kind, we should be tolerant, we should be. But then every time I keep coming back to, yes, but that doesn't mean that we let men into women's prisons or rape crisis centers or like, you can be empathetic and kind without compromising anybody else's safety or comfort or dignity. But as a woman, it plays with your mind because it's very uncomfortable because we are taught from an early age that we're supposed to be nice and let it go and be the bigger person and don't be a difficult woman because difficult is equated with dislikable. I don't know if that's something that you've sort of come across.
Definitely. Actually, the main reason I wanted you to come on the podcast is because my coaching has mainly been around performance. So, how can we think more positively, talk kindly to ourselves, rewire our brain to unlock our full potential? And it's mainly been around work performance. In the last 2 years, one of the key elements that has now become a core area of the work I do is teaching women how to reclaim their power, how to refine their voice, because of the very thing you've just said is we're taught we need to be likable, we need to be nice. Actually, one client has just gone through the most phenomenal 6-month transformation. One of the key elements was she felt that she was crazy because her boss, who was incredibly narcissistic, very unpleasant, very toxic, bullying, harassing, yelling, not sexually, but just emotionally. So she felt unsafe walking into work. And the core thing that we changed was reclaiming her power, to realize that she's not crazy, she's not difficult, she's not too emotional. She is standing up for her employees and
Yeah.
lead from the heart, lead with empathy. That boss last week has just been fired for his behavior. But it was
Mm.
only when she shifted her energy, when she stood into her power, did more and
Mm.
more people, men and women, then realize, oh, this is actually unacceptable. And I can now
Mm.
come and talk to someone who I can trust, who is empathetic, who understands, who sees. And now
Mm.
I can come forward. And
Mm.
now the company is in a really exciting new chapter. That's why when I saw everything that was happening with you more on LinkedIn, I was like, wow, this is someone who's really owning their wild woman energy, owning their voice, and not backing down, which is really courageous. And as you said, it's kind of weird that it is courageous, but
Mm.
it is because of the current climate.
Yeah, and I think one of the hardest things is getting it from other women as well, because they've had this whole thing about women supporting women, but there's a lot of women who are supporting this movement, maybe because they don't really understand what's going on. And I think the thing that I felt most proud of is having women come to me and saying, when you first started talking about this, I didn't get it. I didn't see,
Mm,
I was like, what's the harm? And because I must have explained it like hundreds of times, I said, look, if we say that anyone who says they're a woman can enter any space, that's not the same as saying that everyone who is trans is a pervert. It's not. It's about saying that if somebody enters is a man for whatever, whatever reason, whatever background, we can't get them out. We can't do anything about it. We've had numerous cases in gyms, for example. It's a really common place where there's a guy in the changing room who says he's got his tackle out, whatever, and everyone's uncomfortable and they're complaining, and the gym are like, well, just sorry, it's our, he says he's a man or whatever. And I'm quite sure that's probably not a trans person. That's somebody who is problematic. But if we say that anybody who says that we can't do anything about it, you're taking women's
mm,
safety, you're taking their power away from them, you're taking their ability to stand up when there is a problem. And, we don't say that all teachers or people who work with young people have to have DBSs, they have to have a background check. We don't say that doing that means that we think all teachers are perverts. It's just a precaution that we take. And
mm.
these are precautions, but it's been turned into this like cultural identity war, basically. I've explained it to women so many times in so many different ways, and when you explain the consequences of, well, it might be okay to say pregnant people, but actually, if we remove all of this language, there's already been calls in other countries to actually remove the word woman, not man, interestingly enough, but woman. Like in
It
Ireland,
never is.
there was a vote to try and take the word woman off to be more inclusive. Like, how is that more inclusive? But I think one of my gifts has always been, I was a journalist for many years, is being able to take quite complex things and like almost like dumb them down. I used to
Mm,
joke when I worked on The Guardian that my superpower was being not as clever as a lot of other people, because I had to really go back to these really, really clever people and be asking them like really simple questions to understand what the heck they were going on about. Now I'm wondering if it's the other way around, and perhaps I was doing myself down. But that's what's made me most proud, is to be able to kind of take something that's quite complex and be able to present it to people in a way and say, look, and I've had so many women who've said to me, I didn't really get it. I thought maybe you were being a bit off to start with, but because you kept coming back and you kept showing me examples, I get it now. It doesn't give me great pleasure in terms of like, oh, I got them on side. It's not about that. It's about, I've got a daughter and I want her to not lose all of the rights that we've fought for so many years and everything we've worked so hard for. I want her to have all the things that I've enjoyed and to be, like I was back in 1980. I could literally see it. It makes me sound really old. But there was another thing I thought of when you were talking about as well. I don't know what the demographic of your podcast is, but I'm 50, and I feel like also I'm in that kind of age bracket now of where it's kind of even harder for women, because you're even more discounted because you haven't even got your looks or your youthfulness. Like, you're just kind of this old bag, and you'll hear when people abuse women on this, who speak up about this topic, even like J.K. Rowling. She's a bit older than me, I think she's 56, but they'll often use phrases like old bag, old hag, and there's like so much disrespect around it. And again, there's been something for me, it's about like, maybe it is that I'm a bit older and I've got a bit more experience under my belt, but also like, no, you will not discount me because I'm washed up in my 50s or whatever. The number of times I've ended up in sort of conversations with people online where that's basically what they're implying. And it's just so dismissive. But yeah, there's been something really like liberating because I feel like I've always been very opinionated and I've always stuck up for myself. But something happened to me a couple of years ago, which sounds a little bit similar to what happened with your client, which actually really knocked my confidence when I was right and when to speak up and when to stay. I think as women, we're often more self-reflective, we're often more willing to take responsibility, and maybe we've contributed to this, maybe we are wrong, or maybe. And I think what it's unleashed in me is I know I'm right about this. I know I'm on the right side of history. And obviously, I'm happy to debate the nuances of it or whatever, but ultimately, this is science, this is biology. No one's going to tell me that I'm wrong. It's like the emperor's clothes. There's been a great liberation in that, actually. I've found that the less you care about being liked, I like myself better, even in a short space of
Mm.
time. Because in order to speak up in this way, you have to let go of that. I've probably like eradicated years of hang-ups in about the last 8 weeks. Because every name that I get called, every time someone comes in, like it hurts less because it is coming from a really genuine place where you feel you are absolutely right. You've done your research. You're not just throwing things around willy-nilly. I don't know if any of that makes any sense.
No, it really does. What I'm hearing from you is you feel really aligned to your higher self, aligned to your true self, whichever resonates,
Yeah.
and you just are really aligned with your values. And it sounds like you're now, and I was seeing it as well, like you're now in such a place where, as you said, you don't care, like you're just liberated from anything that maybe used to hold you back. And I can relate to that. And even seeing you use your voice and have that bravery, like some things I get when there is a smart and intelligent woman making sense, they are always attacking looks. So I'm always told that, and I've had it in business where like I've never had a girl talk to me in such a way when someone's tried to screw me over or push me over
I've
and
had
then I
that too.
stand in.
Yeah.
It's like, oh,
Yeah, yeah.
I've never had a girl talk to me this way. So I've always had this element, and I look younger than I am, and that's triggered things for people. But what's been interesting, and I completely relate to what you're saying when you're finding your voice and you feel liberated. And I've been finding this since coming out the other side of PMDD, where it just kind of tore me down into places I had no idea I could be torn into because it came with suicidal depression and then everything in
Mm.
between. Really, since January, more and more I've been able to step into my power and then seeing you. And just small stuff. When I'm in the mountains, I'm quite fit and strong. And every time I overtake, usually a man, but it can also be women saying this to me.
Mm.
And I was even dating someone, and every time we met someone on the mountain, he'd be like, my friend's in front of me because her dog is pulling her up the hill.
Mm.
And I was like, how freaking fragile is your ego? It doesn't matter if I'm in front of you or behind you. The mountains and nature should be a safe place for everyone. So even just posting a small reel saying that, yes, the help is like 10 years of training, basically. It's not my
Mm.
dog pulling me uphill. But I probably wouldn't have shared it 6 months ago or even a year
Mm.
ago because
Mm.
of what we've been talking about. Like, oh, you need to be nice, you need to appeal to everyone, you want to be the good girl.
Yeah, the good girl. It's totally that. It's being the good girl, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because when you're growing up as a woman, you are told like you've got to be nice, you've got to be polite, you've got to be good. You don't want
Yeah.
to upset anyone. You want to keep the peace. And so that's what the PMDD brought up, all of that.
Mm.
So that's what I have been focusing on removing. So you can, as you've been doing, stand in your power, stand in your voice, and know that it's true to you, if that
Mm.
makes sense.
Yeah, and I think it's about not feeling that you have to apologize because I think women who speak up for themselves and whatever it is, I've had exactly the same as you. So when I've complained as a business owner about poor service, a number of
Mm.
times, I've had people actually use that phrase, I've never met somebody so rude. And I'm like, I'm really, because I'm really polite in saying it, I'm just saying what I see. This, you haven't delivered what you said you were going to deliver. I'm not being rude or like, but I think as a woman, people will naturally see you as aggressive if you're
Mm.
just straight and you say what you say. And I often you say, because I went through a period where I had for a couple of years really like therapy, sort of therapeutic coaching, and I used to say to her all the time, I don't understand how other people say it because I just say, would you be able to let me know why that hasn't been delivered or whatever? I'm always polite. I'm always like, I'd love to know what other people say. And she was like, well, they don't say it, or they just, it's something I've learned to protect myself. And actually, it's been quite good in this situation
Mm.
because I didn't know how to do it before. I was so always standing up for myself that I couldn't sometimes tell whether something was like I had that fight or flight thing where everything felt the same to me. So like a slight from somebody was the same as like what's going on now. And
Mm.
I've got better at recognizing the difference, but also knowing sometimes when actually something isn't worth your time and energy. I used to feel like everything was worth my time and energy, and I had to kind of fight everything. If I think about where I was a couple of years ago, I don't think I would have had it in me to do what I'm
Mm.
doing now. But part of it has been learning what I can let go and I don't have to explain because I think I often had this like I needed to explain why I'd made a decision or explain to people why I was moving
Yeah.
away from them or why I was like backing off or not doing something anymore. And I've learned that you don't have to explain. It's how other people do it all the time. I felt like I had to explain, but yeah, there's definitely something really like liberating about just showing up completely. I don't think I've ever felt so much myself because I am opinionated and I am difficult. Like
Mm.
that's I've always been like that. But I think part of the reason I probably really started to struggle actually in my business and was doing because I was trying to be nice all the time. And actually my natural setting isn't to be nice. I mean, I'm nice, but I'm one of those people that will call out things that are not right. I'll generally always be private and professional. But that actually is reminded me of something else that's worth saying. Because my background is journalism, and obviously I've got a lot of knowledge about media law and defamation. Some of the things that people have posted about me have just been horrendous, like, and not just on LinkedIn, like every platform, everywhere. And I would say to somebody, "Oh, that's defamatory. That's fair comment, but that's not." And something that I've got a lot of criticism for is screenshotting. One lady, and she did this post about me, and it was like thousands of words and published it on LinkedIn and blocked me as if I wasn't going to someone wasn't going to find it and say, oh, somebody's written a post about you.
Yeah.
And she hadn't named me, but I was clearly identifiable because people were like saying, oh yes, I've seen that post about pregnant people on the bottom, and some people were even saying my name and stuff. So she wasn't just being defamatory, she was encouraging other people to join in. But then there was like this absolute outrage that I was screenshotting what they'd written about me in public to the internet and sharing it in my Instagram stories and just reflecting it back at them, basically. And in the case of this particular podcast uh, episode, I took all the quotes that I felt were
Yeah, I
defamatory
saw it.
I turned it into a video. And I was very aware when I was doing it because all I was doing was taking the content that had been published and just highlighting it to people as to saying, this is about me. I've been contacted by numerous people who've said it's about me, and obviously making sure that I was legally covered. But I found that really, really interesting. There was even a bit of tension in me about, well, am I being mean? Am I being horrible?
Mm.
By actually just reflecting back to somebody what they'd said in public and what they'd shared. But I definitely felt a little bit of a nice girl on my shoulders, kind of going, oh, maybe you're being mean, or maybe you need to be the bigger person. And but actually, no, sometimes you don't need to be. Actually, being the bigger person is standing up and saying, no,
Mm.
that's not on, and taking action to make sure that it doesn't happen again. But that's definitely been I've definitely felt the rub at times, but I've been able to get through it. I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, you've done so well getting through it. I saw the what you were referring to as well. And I think one of the funniest, funny, but kind of funny, is when, I mean, this is going back maybe 6, 7 years. I was living in London, and I remember at one of your events, you said like every story is content. And
Yeah.
you've been so doing that. When I saw the screenshots, I was like, it's just
Yeah.
brilliant. But I think what I've been most impressed with when reading your content is it's not come across as emotionally charged in, obviously there's emotion, but not in a way that skews or is biased. Like you've just presented the facts and the truth. is how it's come across to me, which is I think why I've been so like it's so admirable because you're not coming across and throwing, mud right back at them through or whoever through nastiness or bitchiness. It's just been this is what's been said and this is what it
Yeah,
sounds
yeah,
like.
it's factual. Like it's
Yeah.
factual. And this is the thing, I can't ever think of a time I've ever personally insulted anybody because it's just not
Mm,
in, like, I might say I disagree with what you're saying or this is what I think, but it's actually quite extraordinary when the level of like where people would just immediately go to insults and start calling you names. It gets very personal very quickly. And
mm,
it's just not how I operate. It's just not, and I also think to myself, well, everybody's watching. I hope that they can see that I'm conducting myself politely and I'm not being abusive. I'm not making it personal and reflecting back at somebody, the content they publish is not personal. They took that decision. It is interesting to see how people react and different types.
mm,
And I met up with a another strong woman yesterday,
mm,
Tanya de Grunberg. I never quite know how to say her word, but her name. But I interviewed her when I was a journalist, like back in, about 10, 12 years ago. And we were just like, we were both saying that although, because she's had similar sort of cancellations or she's managed to, it's not been so spectacular as mine. We were saying, although it's been horrendous, we've both met or reconnected with some really amazing women. And
mm.
you find things of, oh, why wasn't I spending time with women like this all along? Because I don't enjoy spending time with people like this anyway. And people who are going to resort to personal attacks and go and attack people online. 'Cause I don't think I've ever gone to anyone's social media post. So I might have actually seen the odd thing and disagreed with somebody, but I don't think actively ever gone to a social, even like something I really, really disagree with. I've n never actively gone and thought, right, I'm going to go on there and like swear at them or, it just
Yeah.
wouldn't even cross my mind. But although it's been awful, it's reassured me that there are some great women in the world. There are, other women out there who are finding their voices. And there's a client of mine, a former client of mine, who I hadn't seen her for a while, and she started popping up on my posts, and I kept thinking I must send her a message and see how she is because I don't know, I just had a feeling something was going on with her. And then she came out and said she'd been through some kind of harassment situation. She posted this publicly on LinkedIn. And so I did reach out to her and said, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear what's happened to you, and let's catch up, let's have a coffee or whatever." And she said, "Thank you so much. Just seeing you speak and saying, she said it's emboldened me just to get out there. I've been through this awful thing. It was a harassment at work." And she said, it's not the first time it's happened to me as a woman. She said, and it's just made me think, no, I'm just gonna tell everybody I'm not gonna be the nice girl anymore. So I think there's been lots of good things about it, and it has reconnected me with some like really decent women because I think decent women don't throw each other under the bus. Like
No.
if I saw another woman having a hard time of it online for expressing an opinion, I would either not get involved at all if I didn't know them, I wouldn't add to it. But I might be inclined to reach out to them and say, hey, even if I disagree with them, like, hey, you okay? Because like
Mm.
it always amazes me how many women are just so inclined to shove each other right under the bus.
Yeah, it's surprising. I've had it on a much smaller scale, but in the village I live in. And I just did my boundary. Someone wanted to know intimate details about my life, and I said no.
Mm,
Sorry, like I'm not willing to share that information with you. It's just none of your business. They're like intimate details, and that's just for me to keep to myself. And that was triggering for them.
mm,
So I almost got cancelled from my friendship group, basically. It was really horrible when it happened. It took unfolded over 2 months. At one point, I was like crying all over the mountain with my friend, being like, "This is really horrible." But then once
mm,
you're out the other side, it is easier than you probably build
mm,
up in your head. You think it's gonna be awful, but you can get through it. As you said, you survive it and you come out stronger. You know who
mm.
you are more. And as you said, you start to realize actually, who do I want in my
Yeah.
life? Who will I spend time with? And actually, who do I not want? And I've looked back and I've gone, it was super shit what they did, and how
Mm,
they've done it. But actually, I'm really grateful because now I see their true
mm,
colors. And now I
mm,
can go, I don't want that. I don't want someone who is two different people.
mm.
I
Yeah.
would like to be friends with those who are just genuine, authentic, lead with their heart, and are willing to stand up for each other if someone else is going through a tough time. So I think these lessons or these challenges can be hard, they can be scary, they can be financially challenging. But I wonder sometimes if it's just you're being guided into the next level or to something better.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I certainly feel like and I certainly think the industry that I was in, the kind of online business marketing industry, it's new, it's unregulated, and as someone who come from a profession like journalism, although a lot of people think journalists lack integrity, it's actually you have to follow a code of conduct. A lot of
Mm,
people go into journalism because they are principled and they want to expose unjustness, and a lot of people just think it's about the Sun or the Daily Mail, but actually a lot of people they want to get to the heart of the truth, the matter. They want to expose injustice. Most of my journalist friends are difficult, like because you wouldn't go into that profession
yeah.
if you were a biddable person, sort of generally. It sort of made me realize, in a way, like some of the people that I ended up spending time with were quite sort of like vacuous. I says vacuous. It sounds awful, but like I just felt like no wonder I was feeling like misplaced, and I didn't know quite where to put myself, because when you're trying to kind of fit in a space which isn't the right space for you, it is going to feel hard because you're going to feel like you're
Mm,
shape shifting and you're trying to kind of like, and although it has been like pretty awful, it doesn't just being having the courage to speak up doesn't mean that it's not awful. And
mm,
I've had like problems, with family and, because they obviously get worried about it.
mm,
But I feel about a million times better with myself, because when you're showing up as someone who isn't really you, it's sort of like a weight on you, isn't it?
mm,
When you're not being yourself. Although I'm going to have to kind of rebuild my business really from scratch, I think there's probably something quite nice about flushing out the people that aren't the right people, attracting
mm,
some new people. I've reconnected with some really great people that I was connected with before. There's something quite nice about that and quite liberating, I think, because I did often find that I was, having to please a lot and questioning myself, whereas I think I've questioned myself the least in the last 8 weeks.
mm,
I had that sort of quiet time. I had quite a quiet, reflective time when I had some therapy and some coaching, because really had hit a kind of, so,
mm.
sometimes I think these things come along at the right time, don't they?
I think so. Funnily enough, the PMDD basically put a full stop to my life. So I've actually just gone about rebuilding the whole business from scratch, and I
Mm,
lost the network mostly because I was not able to do anything really.
mm,
And it has been, I mean, it's really challenging. It's taken more time than I thought it would, as all these things do. But it's meant that I've been able to rebuild it from a place where I'm actually really connected to
mm.
who I really am. And then it's always a process as well. I feel at the moment I'm continuing to get to know myself, but it meant that I've really built a business. I'm able to really attract the kind of people who really
Mm.
resonate with who I want to hang out with, because I want to hang out and I want to coach really fun people who have my values. So that's been really interesting. So I'm sure for you, it's going to be, although maybe it's hard to see it sometimes, but it could be such a phenomenal thing for you to.
Yeah, I think it's just when it hits you suddenly like that, it's quite difficult, even for me, someone who does this kind of thing for a living. I'm just starting to kind of think, oh, because you can't, once it happens to you, you can't go back. Because once people have started to say, oh, I think you're disgusting, I don't want anything to do with you, whatever, even if there's lots of people who don't think that, you can never go back to doing what you were doing before. It's only kind of started in the last few weeks. I've started to think about how I can kind of bring everything together. But it's still, had financial implications, and just, generally your time and attention. And it's just like other things that I wanted to focus on. I've just had to kind of like drop. But I think sometimes life comes and gives you like I don't know, tap on the shoulder, and when you're not going in the right direction. And I'm not sort of a big wee woo person, but I do kind of think the working world I was in before, like I'd already kind of withdrawn from it quite a lot, because I also found it quite materialistic and and I've never been particularly money motivated. I mean, it's nice to have money and be comfortable, whatever, but I've always actually been much more motivated by doing work that I enjoy, and being surrounded by people talking about how much money they're making and designer handbags and stuff. It's just like, it's just not my not my thing. I already felt like my values were out of alignment because I was like, hey, this isn't right. Like, I don't think that this is a good practice. And people are like, shut up. Like, shut, I actually got trolled for saying some of those things. So I think, yeah, sometimes life kind of just steers you in a different direction, probably when you most need it, I think.
I agree. I mean, I'm definitely more. I went down the rabbit hole of woo woo when the whole PMDD started, just for I needed something bigger than myself at the time.
Mm,
Um, and now I really enjoy that side of things and I really value it. And I
mm,
completely agree. I think when you're so misaligned, something is brought in
mm.
to just like, what are you doing? So you
Yeah,
have to stop and hold the mirror up
yeah.
to readjust, to realign, and to head
Mm.
in the better direction for yourself.
Yeah, yeah. But even sort of things like I straightened my hair for years, partly because my hair is a nightmare. I've got so much of it, and it was a nightmare. But I had this like Japanese Yuko straightening, and I always had like perfect hair.
Yeah.
And I I grew my hair out a few, and it was like took a lot of a lot of what's the word, dedication to grow it out curly again. And now my hair's like most days it's a mess. I have more bad hair days and I have good hair days because I'm a bit lazy in terms of like doing all the stuff you're supposed to do. But even that made me feel a lot better
Mm.
because that's me. I've got curly hair. When
Yeah.
I when I was younger, I had that thing, you turn up the day you want it to look great. It looks terrible. You look like you've been dragged through a hedge. And then, some days it looks fantastic. But that's me. I've got about four times as much hair as most normal people. It hurts my head. It's a pain in the ass. But like I just kind of thought I just want to go back to that. And I was worried about things like I've always had a really lined forehead. Even when I was young, part of the reason I kept it straight is because I had this fringe which like hid my
Mm.
lined forehead, and part of it was actually just like getting used to. Even now, like I will look at, I think, oh my God, like because I don't think I look particularly old for my age, but I've always had this lined forehead even since I was younger, and almost like getting comfortable with the fact that you're a woman, you're getting older, and that's it's you're gonna have lines, aren't you? And I think there's a lot of pressure. I'm probably one of the only women I know who's not had any kind of like cosmetic, anything needles or anything, like, because I've always just thought, oh no, I don't. But like there's so much pressure on women, I think, to look eternally young, to be
Mm.
kind, to be nice, to be perfect, not to be competitive. Like when you were telling about going up the mountain, like
Mm.
I'm really competitive. And in terms of running and stuff, and like if I think I can beat a man, that gives me great, especially if it's a man who's trying to give it that, I just love it. But again, that none of those are considered to be very female, feminine traits, are they? But
No.
that's you, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree. I remember when you actually changed your hair and I thought you looked like suddenly something just shifted. You looked glowing. I thought you looked absolutely wonderful. And I completely relate to the competitive side of things. I've actually stepped away from, I used to compete, but I stepped away from it. It just doesn't fit. Someone was like, you're in the mountains all the time. Why aren't you on Strava? And for me at the moment, I'm just doing my own thing that I'm like, oh, I don't want to be on
Yeah,
Strava.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'm not on Strava because I can't be bothered with everyone comparing like, oh, I did a PB over this 200-meter stretch or whatever. But like, I I still get something out of And the other thing that I don't think I would have been able to do when I was younger was a different place. But you mentioned my choir. So a few years ago,
Mm.
I always had this thing because I was a runner. I was like, oh, wouldn't it be nice at park run at Christmas if there was carol singing, or like I just. And at that time I was in a place where I really like my confidence had really been like knocked. I remember I just made this snap decision, I'm going to make it happen this Christmas. It was a couple of years ago, and I asked like loads of people who were just like, you're really weird. And then we ended up, and I kind of thought I've always sung in choirs, I've always sung, but I don't like being in like normal choirs 'cause I find it a bit boring when you just sit there and you're waiting for your turn to sing. So I just thought like it'd be really cool just to be in a choir where you can sing all the time. And so this choir, we specialise in singing. We sang at London Marathon. We've done London Landmarks. We're doing the Manchester run later this month, and like we have like tiger masks and like, these happy hats, like we have all props and stuff like that. And it's not for everyone. Like your average choir, I never fitted into the choir at school because I liked pop music and stuff, and I didn't want to just be singing classical music and opera and stuff. But anyway, we had great fun. But I was watching myself a video from the London Marathon, and whenever I see videos, I think, God, I just always look like I'm enjoying myself so much.
Mm.
And when I was younger, although I've always like done singing and theatre and whatever, I didn't enjoy it as much because I was a lot more
Mm.
self-conscious. And there I am, like singing to thousands of people at London Marathon. I've got the best voice in the world, but we're having a good time, like I'm all right, I can hold a tune, but like there's way better people than me. But we're having fun. People are interacting with us and dancing and singing and coming up. And I was just watching myself on video thinking, you got some fun going out. We've got these like buttercup hats that we wear. It's just like the whole thing is just like, I don't know, a load of middle-aged women. But again, it's that thing of as a middle-aged woman, you're supposed to behave in a certain way, aren't you? You're not supposed to go and wear tiger masks and sing and dance and marathons and, you know, but it's really good fun. And I wish I'd had the confidence to do that when I was younger, because
Yeah.
I could have many more years of enjoying it.
I love that. And actually, that's one of the things that I have a weekly accountability with my clients. And I think as you grow older, even in late 20s, early 30s, you kind of put fun aside or playfulness or joy aside for what you
Mm.
think you should be chasing or how
Yeah.
life should be. And I'm always asking, how are you going to bring joy into your life today or into this week? What one to three things
Mm.
will you do? And actually, that's why I've gone away from Strava and away from competing because I just want to have fun in the mountains and I want to do
Mm.
it in my own way. And I don't want to be stuck to a training plan. I just want to go to the gym when I want to go to the gym and go into the mountains when I want to go, not when
Mm.
I have to or should do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So I
yeah,
really relate to
yeah, I
that.
totally hear you. Yeah. Mm.
How would, like, what advice or recommendations do you have for women who would like to, maybe they're on the sidelines at the moment and they're seeing what you're doing or they're seeing what other women are doing, they're feeling really inspired, but they're a little bit nervous to take that first step or the second step into really embodying
Mm.
their power and their voice again?
I feel like I'm no expert on this, but um, because I'm the kind of person who just like, I know I don't look before I jump generally, but when I'm working with clients, because obviously I help people with marketing and branding and stuff. And what I'll always say to them is like my comfort level is different to yours. So I was a journalist before. I was used to putting myself out there. Like I've said before, I was like a theatre-y musical kid. So I've had that sort of putting myself out there since I was younger. So I think you've got to work in your tolerance level and just trying to push yourself out of, if someone went to try and do what I did, like I know I've got a much higher tolerance level. So when people say to me, oh, they message me and go, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I wish I was as brave as you." I'm like, "It's okay. Like, you've sent me a message. But even just like liking something, or I mean, if it's about putting yourself out there and speaking up about something, just liking something or just adding a comment or like, I think it's just about pushing yourself slightly out of what is normal to you. I find it quite difficult because I am just one of these like jump first people, and it works out like 80% of the time, but I also crash and burn sometimes. My dad has this thing that he always says, even though my dad's like not a particular massive risk taker, but he's always sort of said like nothing's irreversible. If you make the wrong decision, you can always change it, do something different afterwards. I always think to myself, what's the worst that can happen? When I'm talking to clients, I just try and get them just to do something that just feels a little bit uncomfortable and then gradually increase their tolerance. I mean, I guess you would be better at this than me because you're a coach, aren't you? I was thinking, I don't really know. I know I just kind of do it. But I know certainly with things like content and things, if you go all out and something happens or something unexpected happens, it can really kind of throw you. But if you're just constantly each week saying, I'm just going to do something that's just a little bit like, I mean, I had these two ladies who came and sang with my choir last year, and that was made me so proud, but they had never ever sung in public before, ever. And they got up on a stage at a half marathon and sang, and they were terrified. But when I looked over at them, they were just having so much fun, and you could just tell they were enjoying it. That just gave me so much joy. And one of these ladies said maybe she'd had her 50th birthday, and she was having a year where she was doing things, deliberately push herself out of her comfort zone. And for her, it was like jumping out of a plane or something, like singing in front of people. But yeah, I just think, I don't know, like, what would you say? Because I always feel like I don't know if I'm the best person to advise but I just know that with clients, I just say, just push yourself a little bit, because then you can push yourself a little bit
Mm.
further and a little bit further. And, and it's like with running and stuff. I'm a run leader, which again, it's the most unexpected thing in the world that I would be a qualified run leader, but after COVID, they just needed more people to do it. But I love helping people go from not running to 5K. I love doing that. And again, it's just a little bit at a time, isn't it? And it's a bit like sometimes people will come and they'll get to week 6 or 8 and they'll be like, oh, I had to walk a bit today. So what? You had to walk a bit today. Come back next week, or you missed a week. That's okay. Just pick up. So for me, it's always just about little incremental and just keep at it, and just keep pushing yourself. But yeah, you've probably got better insight as a coach than I
No,
have.
I love it because I think it's really important that we hear people's stories and then we hear how they did it because we can relate to it. And also sometimes we need to hear things in different ways from
Mm.
different people in different ways and at different times for it to really land or
Yeah,
suddenly
yeah,
be relevant to us.
yeah.
So I
Mm.
love finding out how other people did it from what like from your story and from what you've shared. It's really been interesting because like you did such due diligence in having all your research, which increased your confidence. And then you started posting little by little. And so what
Yeah,
you've done
yeah.
now is reflecting on what
Actually,
you did.
that's
Mm.
that's probably a really good point because that is a really good point because when I'm working with people who've started a business and they're struggling with content and marketing and stuff like that, I'll often say to them, look, you've never done this before. So you're kind of expecting that you've had a completely different career, you've done something completely different, and you're expecting that you're just gonna like show up and know how to do this. Like it's a skill and you have to give yourself the time to learn that skill and you have to practice. But that's exactly it. I mean, it's like with anything, isn't it? Oh God, if like pacing with running, like I used to do it all the
Mm.
time, I used to be really good at it. And then the last few times I've really cocked it up because it's about how you prepare, isn't it? So it's about like
Mm.
you knowing what pace you want to do, making sure your watch is on the right settings, making sure that you like, but just trying to think of other things like even like the singing and stuff like that, when I have had singing training in the past and stuff, it's very skill based. You practice, you learn techniques that you can use, you apply them, and then when something happens, when you're under a high pressure situation, you've got the skills, you've got like a toolbox that you can go into. And I do think there is definitely something in that. I think we often underestimate skills because actually knowing how to do something, having the skill gives you the confidence, but you have to start somewhere, don't you? You do have to kind of be a bit messy and be prepared to be a bit crap to start with. I remember like speaking at an event and someone said to me, I'm terrified of doing video. How do I get better at video? And I was like, I really wish I could say something different to you. But the way you get better at video is to do more video. I can give you some tips on scripting, I can give you some templates, but literally the only thing that will help you get better at video is doing video.
Mm.
And so there's got to be a discomfort, there's got to be a period you've got to get through. I don't know if you have any things that help you get through when you're feeling uncomfortable.
I tend to just do it.
Yeah,
And then hope it goes well.
yeah,
But I think definitely exposure has really helped building it
yeah,
up
yeah.
over time, doing those little things. When it's come to uncomfortable situations with people, that's been very triggering. It's been working through why has it been triggering in the
Mm,
first place? And removing that, completely remove the thing that was creating the trigger. Or maybe you
mm,
can just lessen
yeah,
the
yeah.
impact. So
Mm,
then when you come across a similar situation, then it's like, okay, I can do this, or it's fine, or
mm,
you
yeah,
can
yeah.
just kind of power through. I think what you shared is
Mm,
perfect. Like just little by little, actually now we're talking kind of stepping into your power, reclaiming it, embodying it. It is a skill. And it's kind of like a muscle as well. The more you do it, the
yeah,
stronger
yeah,
it
yeah, yeah.
becomes and the easier it is. And actually, I just had a recap session with my client this morning. And at the beginning of the journey, it was terrifying to be with this boss. And now at
Mm,
the end of the journey, he pulled her in and she completely stood her ground, looked him in the eye, held her boundaries. And then when he became inappropriate, just walked out the room. But that was
mm,
like a 6 month journey to get there. So
yeah,
you do,
yeah,
as you said, need to give yourself the space and time not to give
yeah,
up and
yeah,
to accept that it's not going to look pretty or beautiful
yeah,
all the time and it's going to be
yeah, yeah.
uncomfortable, but you can do it anyway.
I used to get like absolutely terrified about singing in front of people. As you were talking about singing in front of thousands of people. I've had it with singing. I've also had it with playing the piano as well. I haven't quite got over that one yet, but I'm sure if I did the same thing, but I had the worst possible thing that could happen when you know, your mind goes blank and you completely mess up and you just make a complete fool of yourself. And that was almost like the worst thing that could possibly happen happened. So after that, I was
Yeah.
like, actually, I survived. I'm still here. And since then, I've never really like worried too much about it. And it's funny because I had to get to that point where the worst, I don't think that would be, I don't know if that would be right for everyone, but I had rock bottom. The worst thing that, you know, the public blowout, it was kind of gone after that. Because I think a lot of the time we're afraid of the worst, but like I'm going through it now. Like a lot of people are afraid of speaking up because I heard a really good quote the other day when someone said, and it was about speaking up, and they said, there was someone who'd had an army career, I think, and they said, like, when you go into battle, you go into it with the attitude that you're already dead. And I was like, whoa, that's like quite deep. But when it comes to speaking up or having courage or whatever, if you go into it going, right, well, I've already like bombed out, I thought, God, that's such a different energy, isn't it? So that's how we motivated as men to like do a great job. Is you go into battle like you're already dead. I'm going through it now. And if somebody had said that I would just be sitting having a conversation with you and would not be like sobbing on the floor, like I don't think I would have imagined that. But the worst is often never as bad as we think it is it? You know, we it's fear, isn't it? We're afraid of going to the worst place. When it happens, it's not that bad.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is the brain doesn't know the difference between what is real and what's imaginary. So I tell my
Mm,
clients when you're thinking of worst case scenario and you're spiraling in that, you're activating the physical feelings. So then it almost makes it feel like it's real. Like, oh my God, this is
yeah.
totally gonna happen. But as you said, the way your imagination works is usually not as bad as you think it's going.
Yeah.
Or I'd say 9 times out of 10, there's always light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
Because when I was having the PMDD, there was just a kernel of light that things could get
Mm,
better or hope. One of the things that helped me is just surrounding myself, which we've spoken about, with people that actually will support you
mm,
and be
yeah.
there for you. That's really important.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Totally.
Thank you so much for I've just loved our whole conversation. It's been
Oh, thank you.
incredible.
I hope it's okay. I've always feel like I've spoken too much. It
No,
took me to get off my chest.
no,
But,
I've really enjoyed it, and it's just been wonderful to go into so many different directions and into slightly more unusual areas of conversation that maybe we don't.
it's much more interesting having this conversation than let's talk about a strategic marketing funnel or whatever. Like, you know, that's good, isn't it? So, no, thank you for asking me.
And where can people find you if they'd like to connect with you?
So the best place is probably, God knows what I'll be doing by the time it's up there. Who knows what the future holds at the moment. So my website is janetmurray.co.uk. I'm Janet Murray, quite active on Instagram. LinkedIn has really surprised me actually. Like it's much livelier than I expected, and they're having really lively, interesting conversations. So yeah, Janet Murray or Jan Murray UK on some platforms. But yeah, and God knows what I'll be doing by the time this goes live.
I'll include all the links to your socials. But
Thanks.
yeah, just thank you so much. It's been an absolute joy and pleasure to have you on.
No, I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into this conversation with Janet Murray. Whether you agreed with every word or found yourself challenged, I hope it sparked reflection on what it means to stand tall in your values, speak with kindness, and live as your most authentic self. If this episode resonated, share it with a friend. Let's keep expanding the kindness ripple effect, one act of courage, one act of compassion at a time. And if you'd like to continue these conversations, connect with Janet Murray. Links are in the show notes. I'd love to hear what this episode stirred for you. You can comment below or send me a DM. Please rate, review, subscribe. This really helps the podcast algorithm. Until next time, remember, strength and kindness are not opposites. They are the twin energies of the wild woman. Keep rising, keep leading with love, and never underestimate the power of your presence in the world. Tune in on Thursday. Yes, really, Thursday. Another wild episode is actually happening for the full announcement of my brand new wild mission, as I have entered a new wild chapter. I am now back home and things will resume now as normal. Stay wild and just
have a great life wherever you are.